Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulysses Sembrano.
I'm Evan Klosky.
There we go. Yeah. Hey, that's our third guest of the day, the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can subscribe to Locked On Rays on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, and online at fanstreamsports.com. And when you get in your car, tell your smart device to play Locked On Rays. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays. This episode is brought to you by Locker Room. Download the app and join Ulysses and I on Friday at 9 p.m. to get in on the action and to watch the Rays-Mets game live together. Locker Room, changing the way we talk sports. Okay, Ulysses, we have a special episode today. It has been a very guest-filled week on the Locked On Rays podcast, and we have yet another guest today, and that is Evan Klosky, the sports director of WTSP and our resident New York Mets expert. So what better way to get ready for the Yankees-Mets series than to have on somebody who's a Mets fan and follower. Evan, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It's very nice to bring two passions together. That's Tampa Bay sports and my love for the New York Mets, which provided me a lot of pain in my life, but I keep coming back for more.
I mean, Rays fans kind of can feel the mutual feelings there with that.
Yes.
First off, when did you land the gig at WTSP? So how long have you been in the Tampa Bay area? That's first off. And how are you enjoying things so far in the area?
Yeah, first and foremost, I got down here around the beginning of April. So I've been in the saddle for about a few weeks now, and it's remarkable down here. I mean, the weather right now is as perfect as can be. Haven't explored everything yet, but I have gone around downtown St. Pete, have checked out Tampa Bay in some parts. I've been to Amalie now, have been inside Ray J. The Trop is the next part I'm hoping on Saturday to go and see the Mets and Rays duke it out a little bit. And then beyond that, I got my bagel spot, guys. St. Pete Bagel.
Okay.
I had to do it. So, once you get your bagel spot, everything else kind of just falls into place.
That's right. And that kind of can blend into your morning routine, which, by the way, I want to get into. Okay, you said you've been to Ray J, you've been to Amalie, not to the Trop yet, but have you made the trek, though? You said you've been to downtown St. Pete, so you've definitely gone from Hillsborough County to the Trop, to downtown St. Pete.
Yep.
How did you find that commute? Can you compare it to any other cities where you've covered sports?
Not really. Honestly, I'll tell you this: there's nothing better than, and the station's on Gandy, so there's nothing better when, like the other day, I was at Ray J and driving back on the Gandy Bridge, and the way that sunset's hitting on the water, that is like the ultimate, like just the most calming experience. But it's really cool going down to downtown St. Pete and seeing the Trop down there. It's been a long time, at least for me personally, to kind of have that, because coming from San Antonio, which is my last spot, the AT&T Center is in a world of its own. You have the beautiful Riverwalk area, and people think like, oh, I'm going to go to the Riverwalk and then I'll just trickle into the Spurs game. It's like, no, the Spurs are like 10 minutes that way. and it's like, where am I going? Where did they put this thing? And they thought, and maybe, Rays fans will understand this to a tiny bit, sort of in a reverse way. San Antonio was trying to revitalize that area. It didn't work out. And now, in the reverse effect of the Rays, they're trying to revitalize what they're doing with the Trop, only, which is about to come to a head, we think, at some point, fairly soon.
Right.
Okay, you brought it up, the Tropicana Field stadium issue, so forth. Ulysses and I and so many other Rays followers I feel like we're too close to it at some point, and we've just kind of gotten lost in the minutia. You just coming here to the Tampa Bay area and kind of having an outside view of things. How do you see this thing ending? Like 10 years from now, what do you see? Where are the Rays playing? Are they doing, in your opinion, the split city proposal? Do they just have a new stadium in St. Petersburg? Do they move to Tampa, Hillsborough County? How do you see this thing shaking out, a decade from now or so?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as an outsider, I would be pretty worried about the Rays moving. One, I don't really see the split city being a feasible scenario. I just don't. How are you going to go if you're the MLBPA to your players and say, hey, not only are you going to have dual residency, the dual residency is going to be on opposite ends of North America with crossing over two countries. It doesn't make much sense to me. Now, originally, it sounded like a pretty good bluff. It sounded like, hey, well, we're going to do this. And city council is like, well, if you're going to open up the area, I'm all for it. And it seems like they're kind of playing this charade. I don't know the feasibility of that happening. And if, there can be a world-class facility in Montreal that they're going to open up, it's worth consideration. I always wonder, moving out of a city, there's a reason why you moved away from Montreal. I understand they want their baseball back as well. This is a baseball-rich area. I know a lot of people don't go to the games, but the Rays still do very well ratings-wise on TV. And I think that if there can be some sort of marriage working out in the area, I do believe the Rays would be embraced. But it is an interesting scenario because there are so many transplants to Tampa Bay. And a lot of people, when they come down here, the team that they adopt is usually the Lightning, because a lot of people don't really grow up hockey fans. It's a niche sport. Yeah. But baseball is just it's just bred in you. When I was 5, 6, 7, I remember going to the ballpark with my mom or my dad. And it's just like, you just grow up, as that baseball fan, and that sticks with you for the rest of your life, no matter where you move. And I'm a great example of that. It's just like I am diehard Mets through and through, no matter where I bounce around the country. And I pull for certain teams here or there. Easy for me to, not fly too close to the sun with the Rays. Totally two different worlds. But that's like, from an outsider's perspective, it's scary. And you look at the Trop. I haven't been inside yet, but you look at the Trop, and it's not the world's greatest facility. It's a ballpark that was made for the 1980s. That's yeah. And I once watched a documentary just about this whole revitalization of ballparks in America. And if you notice how they built ballparks now with these beautiful backdrops of not only having the ballpark's open, but so you can see the landscape of the city behind it. You think about Pittsburgh, you think about St. Louis. It's funny, the New York teams don't have that. The Mets are out in Flushing. But nonetheless, you think about some of these new stadiums that have come about and the beautiful architecture that's happened around it. And then you just think about the Rays, who were involved in a world where baseball stadiums there in the 80s were infatuated with AstroTurf. So it's time, and it's time to figure out what's going to happen. I really, really, really hope that they're going to come to their senses, and the Rays are going to stay, and we're all going to have a beautiful facility, and the All-Star game is going to come here, and we can all make sure that Wander Franco and company are going to be in Tampa Bay for a long, long time. But I definitely do think there are reasons to worry. I don't think it's like they're definitely gone, but we're halfway through this thing, and it doesn't seem like it has gotten any closer to getting resolved.
Not at all. And that lease agreement ends in 2027. So time is a ticking, because it takes a long, long time to city planning and get the civil engineers in this place and permits and all that. So yeah, I think that the clock is getting a little bit louder, the tick-tock. But I want to touch on something you said. Yeah, I do agree. Aesthetically pleasing, not at all. That's not Tropicana Field. Functionality wise, though, it rains a heck of a lot. You're going to see all of the thunderstorms, and that's going to happen. No games ever canceled at the Trop. Gotta love that. Number 2, AC in Florida, sign me up. So for functionality, I always tell this to Kevin. The world's most beautiful warehouse has a first name and last name, and that's Tropicana Field, right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm. I agree with all that. I will add the caveat of the catwalks and the B rings and the A rings and everything like that. I mean, Austin Meadows got a double on a pop fly. Let's be honest here with some of that. So if they can get that situated, but yes, you will have a newfound appreciation for 72 degrees. comfortability and no rain delays there. Evan, you've worked in a lot of places throughout the country. And every time that this stadium issue is brought up, everybody just throws out cities. They name this city, that city, the other city. You've worked in San Antonio. I know that's been mentioned as maybe a possibility for MLB expansion. Nashville's another one that's been thrown out there. Charlotte seems to get talked about. Louisville, Indianapolis. Pick a city basically that doesn't have an MLB team, and people will gravitate towards that. Even Orlando has tried to make
Vancouver, Portland. Yeah.
Although I think on the East, they probably keep the Rays on the East Coast, and then if they're going to move Oakland, they would move them to Vegas or somewhere on the West Coast, wherever that may be. But Evan, do you have kind of an idea like what would be a good market for either MLB expansion or for a relocation of a Tampa Bay Rays, so forth?
Yeah, I mean, when I was working in San Antonio, I would love to throw their hat in the ring. The only problem is with San Antonio, they refuse to update their ballpark, and it's not good. They went to AAA, and then in the whole reshuffling, they went right back down to AA. The Brewers organization was threatening not even to bring their team down there if they didn't do like certain renovations into the clubhouse, and so they fixed all that stuff. But so for me, San Antonio is not a viable solution, but Vegas. Absolutely. I mean, you're seeing just with the Golden Knights, with the Raiders, it's a hot market. It's a place where people want to be. And I can only imagine that they would love having a baseball team. The only downside is you definitely have to figure out a dome situation, retractable roof, whatever it might be, because, as hot as it is here, at least with the humidity, you have equal hot out there. I mean, you're hitting like 110 in Vegas in the summer. So that's an issue. I think Portland is interesting. You would have sort of that little back and forth between Portland and Seattle. Having said that, people in that area have grown up as Mariners fans for a long time now. And I don't know if Portland is necessarily built for a two-horse town. I know Russell Wilson's trying to make it happen. He's part of that group. But, I love the city of Portland. I love Portland. Beautiful. I think it'd be a beautiful place to play and bring people and fans. But I think Nashville and Charlotte are really two good options. Just both cities, especially Charlotte, I know just always kind of is at the top of the AAA leaderboard as far as their facilities. So I think those two places would be great. And obviously both cities have major sports teams. They understand it. And I think it's something that would be fairly attractive for those fan bases. So I think those are the ones that I have in my mind. Vegas, Nashville, Charlotte, and Portland in some order out there.
What about, and I don't think this has been brought up for a while, Ulysses, but I know that people have thrown this out, a third team in New York or the New York area. I don't know, wherever that would be, like, I don't know, Hartford.
We got one with the Blue Jays when they get up to Buffalo.
That's true.
That's
so
right.
I guess you kind of have that solved. I guess, technically Tampa Bay had two MLB teams for a month there, but is that
and we have
viable
NBA
at all?
in Tampa.
Yeah, we got a lot of things
everything
going on. Yeah, everything is moving to Florida. Stop, please. Quit moving here. Is that a viability, or is that like, no, the Mets and the Yankees have a foothold. It's just that there's already enough teams up there.
And not to mention, it's like the Yankees really have that foothold. It's like the Mets were at least able to carve that out, and you share the space. I mean, New York is just so big, and Yankee fans typically come from the city, and the Mets kind of cover the island. So from there, you're kind of bouncing around with everybody. From Westchester, who kind of tends to go Yankees, and then upstate, it's kind of a free for all. But I don't see bringing a third team in. I think that's just you're diluting the marketplace, and not to mention the Mets and the Yankees aren't going to want that. They're gonna do everything in their power to keep them away. And I would leave it at 2 for New York.
Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing, and you can track all the action at Bet Online. Get all the latest news, odds, and info for all your sporting needs, including MLB, NBA, NHL, and all your UFC MMA action. So head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today. and receive that 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use that promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. Okay, Evan, so we touched on the Mets briefly, but let's actually dive into what's going on with the Mets. First off, you've been a longtime Mets fan and follower. Why are they so dysfunctional? There's always something going on. Is it the press? They just needled it and left it? I mean, there's Raccoon Gate. There's Steve Cohen. You're firing hitting coaches in early May. Come on. What's going on here?
I was all for the Chili Davis firing, by the way. When your superstar player who you just signed to a mega contract cannot make the Mendoza line. I'm sorry, you got to go. I need Francisco Lindor to be hitting better than 180. So if it's been 2 weeks and I see him failing to make contact and lunging and doing all these things, whatever you're doing is not working. I need someone else who can figure it out. But beyond that, here's the thing about Mets fans, and it's part of understanding Long Islanders and New Yorkers. We're A, blunt, B, cynical, and C, have a bit of a woe is me in them. So here's the thing, right? I'm in a text group chat with all my friends who are Mets fans. And this season, before the 7-game winning streak that's happening right now, everybody's been oh my God, this team, they're terrible, and to be fair, they have 105 RBIs in the season. So that's bad. I mean, that's really, that's pathetic. It's last in the league. They can't hit with 2 outs. I know that's, similar stuff with the Rays, but it's been so depressing to watch them hit. And what Met fans do is they just completely hammer home the fact that they can't hit. On the other side of the spectrum, they're still around 500 at that point before the winning streak began. And their pitching has been just absolutely lights out. Starting rotation, phenomenal. Relief pitching, for the first time that I can remember in the history of being a Mets fan, the relief pitching has been lights out. And, Mets fans don't really give a crap about the good. They just focus on the bad. That's all they focus on. It's never about except for Jacob deGrom. That's there are these mythical figures that come into our lives. Pete Alonso is one of those people that we just, we don't deserve this, but we have it, and we just wish them nothing but the best. And I can't explain why the Mets can't hit with Jacob deGrom, and his numbers are going to be a statistical anomaly in baseball history. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it kind of just snowballs. And I think the difference between the Yankees and the Mets, the Yankees are used to winning, and that's sort of the expectation. And when you're used to winning, you don't really have in the back of your mind that things are going to go poorly. Mm-hmm. For the Mets fans, it's always things are going well. When's everything going to collapse? This can't happen for so long. Familia's looking good. Well, we know he's going to start throwing balls the next time out. It's you just have PTSD. So I just think that that's been part of the ambiance of the Mets. It just trails them around in the media as well. And sometimes it's unfair. And I'll be I think sometimes that stank and that stench, people just love to just dig into it. And I think sometimes it's unfair. And I think you're trying to focus so much on the narrative versus focusing on the here and now. But with Steve Cohen come to the Mets, that was big because they have an owner who's actually going to spend money, and not talking about all the stuff that's outside of baseball. But as far as what we know as him as an owner, he's going to spend a lot of money. And, you saw it in the offseason, right? The Mets fans finally have an owner who says, I want to spend money. And literally, it's down the list. I want this person, this person, this person, this person. It's okay, I understand the guy has he's the richest owner in all of sports, but he's still running a business. You don't just go down the line, lock yourself into long-term deals. If it doesn't work out, lock yourself in the more. Right. It's just Steve Cohen didn't get to where he was going doing bad business. So, that becomes the next thing with Mets fans is then you start, I'm just waiting for things to collapse, and then them ask for getting more people, and then the deadline doesn't, comes and goes, and we're oh, we're cheap again. We're cheap. It's it just automatically just you rush to the negative. So it's tough to unseat all the psychological issues for Mets fans, but it's just something that you grow up into. And, once in a blue moon, you have a season where it's like, wow, like we could actually do it. And, that was the last time, in 2016 when the Mets had a magical playoff run and Daniel Murphy turned into, Randy Arozarena, 1.0 before Arozarena did it. And you just have those moments like once in a while, you finally get gifted a season where you think you can win the World Series.
You talked about DeGrom and Pete Alonso, and obviously those are really big names for the Mets. Probably the biggest stars right now that are producing for the Mets, as of today. But, do you see a problem with how MLB has stars such as Pete Alonso, such as Jacob DeGrom? I mean, every time Jacob DeGrom goes on the mound, that should be must-watch TV if you like baseball. That should just be the thing that you're doing that night. What is MLB doing wrong? I mean, do you see something that they're just not really getting on with these athletic stars and not just promoting it as they should?
I mean, they tried, right? They tried to the let the kids play initiative. I think they want to embrace the fact of bat flips. They want to make the game more fun. Look, I said this the other night, talking to my colleagues. To be completely honest, as a person who loves the sport of baseball, it's at a bad point right now. Like the game and where it is, they have to fix some things. They tried to figure out how to speed it up, didn't work. It's actually making it worse. The runner on second we can talk about, but old school fans don't love it. I think honestly, people who want to go to bed early do, and I think people are coming around to it, oddly enough. But you also have the CBA agreements looming on us. We could be totally locked out next year. And my anticipation is we're going to have some sort of lockout because they are so far apart and digging their heels into the ground. We saw that during the pandemic and how everything shaped out. They need to get young kids interested in the game again. And when you have football as king and you have, even a sport like hockey that kind of moves rapid fate, you're, 2 hours and you're done with it.
Right.
You have to do that. And one thing that the MLB needs to learn from is the NBA, because the NBA is such a superstar driven league. They just let their personalities be personalities. And right. We know Russell Westbrook is coming out there and he's, it's all about fashion. And these players have such a following off the court. And people become involved in them off the court as well as on the court. And you don't really have that in baseball, partly because there's so many games. And B, you just kind of have a different breed of individual. Mike Trout is one of the greatest baseball players to ever play the sport. And, he's stuck in Anaheim. Now, it's still the LA market, but it's, kind of the LA market. Still an hour away from really LA. And, that you can't pick and choose who's going to be a boisterous superstar. He's, he goes about his business and he does his job. And, that's what he does. DeGrom, one of the best peaks. I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Fame pitcher. He needs to do this for a lot longer. But as far as this 3-4 year stretch that he's going to go on, it's going to be one of his best. And he's a mild-mannered guy. The game really needs people like, Tim Anderson, guys that are just hey, I'm going to flip a bat and, people, managers just not being that's unprofessional and yada, yada, yada. It's just just embrace it. If the guy wants to pimp a home run, let him pimp a home run. You know what I want to? Yeah. Not only that, but I want the pitcher also to really get into it if he strikes somebody out, right? If they can bat flip, why can't the pitcher flex the muscle a little bit?
Yeah, Tampa did it last night. Yeah,
I'm all for it. So many people and traditionalists want them to just be stoic and just respect the game, and you can respect the game and also be a personality. I think honestly, I had this conversation with my mother, and she's like, I don't like Bryce Harper. And I'm always like, why don't you like Bryce Harper? Why don't you like Bryce Harper? He does such a good job of kind of being a pompous player in a sense of just the swagger that he has. but he's not hurting anybody. He doesn't disrespect the game. He doesn't do anything off the field that's concerning. He for the most part crushes your team, and that you could be frustrated about that. But like, he's someone who's good for baseball. He's a personality, and as he's gotten older, it's kind of tamed down a little bit. But I mean, those are like, we need to elevate those people. Those people need a bigger spotlight. And, I'm sorry not to be a traditionalist, but that's just, for me, like, I used to be a traditionalist, and now I'm thinking like, hey, like the other day I saw Taijuan Walker just step up to the plate, or yesterday, I guess, against Matt Harvey. And he just, stood there taking 3 strikes and didn't swing. It's like, do we need that in a game? Like, can I just get a real batter up now? Like,
right.
Yeah.
I don't need that. That's not strategy. That's just a waste of time.
I love the word you use, disrespect. I don't think Bryce Harper is disrespecting the game by a bad flip. Who I think disrespects the game is a guy who hits a ground ball and doesn't hustle to first, or doesn't hustle to break a double play. Now that guy, or the guy that is in the outfield and doesn't go really fast to search for a fly ball. Now that guy, he's disrespecting the game. Yeah. Flexing your bicep, staring down opposing hitters, or bat flipping. That's just having fun, because ultimately it is a game.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah, it's funny because Ulysses and I have this conversation about ways to improve baseball. And Evan, you mentioned getting basketball game over in 2 hours, hockey game, same thing, and it's quick. I've always said, hey, make it 100-game season, 7 innings, and do something special for the extra innings and go from there, and find a way to make it creative. And also too, with the marketing the players, I agree. I think MLB does quite a bit, and they've really tried to make a push. It's also a two-way street. Like, players also have to take the initiative to be active on social media and to do commercials and promos and do television and radio hits, whatever it is. But again, when you have a 162-game season and you have spring training and then maybe playoffs, like, guys are tired. They don't want to. That's the last thing they want to do. And guys who have worked in PR for MLB teams have all but said that, like, there's all these opportunities, but not many guys want to take advantage of it and go from there with that. So, okay, Evan, I want to mention this before we kind of move along here. Level of concern for Francisco Lindor. Is this just a slow start? He'll get out of it. He'll live up to this contract, or could this be a big market eating alive a guy that came from Cleveland? We saw it with Carl Crawford going to Boston. What's your take on this situation?
We've seen it with like almost every Met outside of like Mike Piazza. No, I'm not worried about Francisco Lindor. A, he's walking still. B, his fielding has been phenomenal. He's historically been terrible in April. Not this bad, but historically, usually his worst month, I think April and June, are his 2 worst months. He seems like he's a warm weather guy. So, I'm not afraid for him. It's more so James McCann, who I'm like, okay, maybe the discounted version of JT Realmuto is not working out the way we wanted to. That I'm really more like, kind of scared about. But Lindor, I'm whatever, he's going to figure it out. And, the thing about baseball that we all understand is patience. And when he gets on a heater, it's going to be majestic. So I cannot wait to see that happen. When it will, who knows? But he's starting to piece together some hits and get some luck now with a couple of bats. I really wish he would stop bunting. He makes too much money to bunt. Stop bunting, right? I'd rather you strike out than bunt.
See, we come from a different perspective because the Rays players don't get paid anything in comparison to the rest of baseball. So it's like bunt all day, and they strike out. Everybody strikes out at a 32% clip. I will say this, though, about Francisco Lindor. So he doesn't like playing in the cold weather. So what's he doing in New York? So he's going to suck for April and May and suck in September and in October. Like,
he came from Cleveland. He came from Cleveland, so he understands
That's
it.
true.
It's just, it's just something he's got to deal with and get through. I mean, I remember when I played baseball, and obviously it's not like a tremendous player here, but when I played baseball, I hated the fall season. Like in New York, you went through the summer, I felt great, and then I get to the fall ball, and it was like, oh, it's cold, and you're kind of losing steam. So, not to mention these players come from these beautiful areas in Florida and Arizona, then they get shipped to like Detroit, Cleveland, New York, and Minnesota, and it's like, oh man, like I got to play in 30-degree weather. That's cool. Love doing that. So, I'm not freaking out. Look, half of the fans there who are in Mets Nation will say, I'm sure are, but that's just the way that they're grown to understand how superstars perform. And you think back to like Jason Bay, Roberto Alomar when he came in. K-Rod to an extent.
Yep.
It's every relief pitcher they try to. They signed Familia to like a 3-year, $30-something million deal, and he's like been a 7th inning guy. So. It's just like, and I'm missing like a slew of them. Just a ton of guys that they bring in, and they just stink. I can't explain it. What are you supposed to do? It just happens.
But former Ray Aaron Loop is working out tremendously.
He's doing well.
The Mets.
Really well.
Yeah. He's doing great. Yeah.
Yeah, the Rays could use him for sure. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. So many different flavors. And you can't run out. You won't get bored with all these flavors. We're talking about coconut almond, mint brownie, salted caramel, double chocolate, a little bit of something for everybody. And not only are these protein bars delicious and tasty, but they're healthy as well. Most of the flavors have somewhere in the range of 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs. We know you want your summer body, so what better way to start than with Built Bar? Go to BuiltBar.com. Use that promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED, the numerals 15, and that'll get you 15% off your first order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Okay, Ulysses, I think we've talked enough baseball with Evan here. Should we put him on the hot seat with a little baseball trivia, right?
This is the time. This is the time. And
it's going to be scary.
Evan, I'm sorry, but this is kind of a tough one, I think. So welcome to the hot seat of Friday trivia on Locked On Rays. Are you ready, Evan?
I am. We'll see how this goes.
Okay.
He was just Googling Mets facts and figures all day before getting ready for this trivia question.
That's right.
All right.
In front of me, I have the list of the top 10 Mets all-time hits leaders. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
All-time. Top 10. Can you name 4 of these top 10?
David Wright.
That is correct. He is number 1 with 1,777. Captain America. What a tragic story. Hall of Famer.
I'm kind of gonna start. I'm like in my mind going like present to old. I'm thinking Jose Reyes is probably on there somewhere.
Correct. Look at that. Number 2 on the list with 1,534.
I'm hoping Carlos Beltran.
Incorrect. Strike 1.
Yep. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Let's go through the teams.
You have 3 strikes, by the way, so you get
strikes?
basically 3 misses. Yeah. No foul tips.
No foul tip. I don't even know what a foul tip would look like. All right. Let's go with is John Olerud up there?
Nope, not quite. Okay. Strike 2.
Now I gotta dig into it. See, this is what happens when I go present to old. I gave myself no wiggle room.
I will give you this. 2 of the guys in this top 10 list, me and Kevin, actually, you were the one that brought him up during this podcast.
Okay. Well, let me say this too, not to throw Evan off base here, but this is guys who got the most hits in a Mets uniform, not
correct
all time that played, that may have just played a year or 2 with the Mets. So I don't know if that helps at all or not, but
all right, let's see. I want to say Strawberry, but I really should have started with 86. Strawberry?
Yes, very good. He's number 9 on the list with 1,025 hits. You have 1 more in you.
See, it's like I'm going now with the 86 Mets, and I'm like,
I don't know. You can.
Well, was Keith Hernandez around long enough? Or is it Gary Carter?
I'm going to give you 1 more foul tip.
I said no foul tips, but okay.
I guess I figured out what the foul tip was.
You're close with the 86 Mets. It's
Dykstra?
Ooh, I'm going to have to call it, Kevin. Mookie Wilson.
Really? Mookie had that many hits?
Mookie Wilson is number 6 on the list, was 1,112. Look at that.
Yeah. Let me pause you real quick because this is very embarrassing. We actually are running out of time, so let's log back on. It'll just be like a couple more minutes. Okay?
Yeah, that's all good.
I'll see you in a couple.